All right, guys, if you are a seller in this market and you're getting multiple offers, you're going to want to listen to this one because we're going to tell you how to figure out which one you want to take.
You better get fired up.
All right, guys, as always, thanks for watching, whether you're on YouTube or on Facebook. If you get any comments, questions, anything like that, feel free to put them in the comments, and we will certainly respond to them before the end of the video. Lissette, how are you?
I am awesome, Joe. How are you?
You are awesome. I'm awesome too, man. This is a cool topic. Lissette, it was her idea to bring this up, which I think is great. We are still seeing multiple offers. In fact, I would say if you're below that 450 mark, you're probably seeing at a greater clip than a lot of the higher end price points. And so a lot of people think it all comes down to price, and price is big. In fact, it's usually the biggest thing. But there are a lot of other things going on in an offer that as a seller, you want to pay attention to. As a buyer, you want to make sure you're adding to present your offer as well as possible, to put it in the best light possible. So Lissette, kick us off. Give me maybe one or two things that a seller would be looking for in a multiple offer situation where maybe the price is the same on both, but that one thing, that term is going to be the thing that pushes it over for them.
There's so many factors that play into multiple offers. And what I like to do is to lay all the offers out. I put it on my little spreadsheet and I put in all the terms and conditions that each offer has. And one of the things that we're looking at is, are there any additional terms that the seller is asking for? So for example, is there any seller concession that a buyer is asking? Because if they're both in at over asking, they're both in at the same sale price, but one is asking for $10,000 more in seller concession and the other one is not, that's affecting your seller's bottom line. So that's one of the factors I could think right off the top of my head that, sticks out when presenting these multiple offers.
Yep, concessions is a good one because literally it's the same as the price, right? Because it's adding right into that bottom net. So that's a phenomenal one. Here's another one, contingencies. And I've got three of the bigger ones, although you can have, any contingency you want. Three of the bigger ones are sale contingency. Does that buyer have to sell their home first? That's usually a pretty ugly contingency. There are ways to make that look better too, right? Like, how are you going to price it? If you're going to price it 20, 30 grand over market comps, that's really a huge red flag, right? Whereas if you're going to come in a little under market, now there's a good chance, right? Here's another one, appraisal. Does it have to appraise? If you get a cash offer, you don't need an appraisal, which is great. And if you're funded, but the buyer's got enough cash, they could also give you some gap protection, right? So if there's a gap in the amount that you're offering and what it appraises at, the buyer is upfront telling you, you don't even need to negotiate. I'm willing to cover this much shortage. That's nice, right? And the last one's inspection. I would guess 95 to 98% of offers today are going to have inspection contingencies. 2 years ago was a much different deal, but now you're going to see a lot of that. But are you doing 5 days, 7 days, 10 days, 15 days? There's a big difference in that. You can also, as a buyer, make your offer look stronger by saying, I'm only looking at major items like electrical, plumbing, roofing, and air conditioning. Man, okay, if you're only willing to talk about big things, or, hey, I'm only going to negotiate things that pop up that I cannot find somebody to do them for under $5,000. All right, I feel pretty good about that as a seller, right? So there's ways to tighten up and make these things look better. Lissette, what else you got?
So another factor it plays into is escrow deposit. How much is the buyer going to put down into escrow? Now, again, when we're putting all the offers in front of the seller, when we have someone coming in at a higher number in escrow deposit, comes across as a stronger offer, a stronger buyer as well. That goes hand in hand with financing. Maybe your property has some issues that you're a little bit concerned may not fly with a VA or FHA. Maybe a conventional offer will be a better fit for your property. And one of the things I really like to look at as a listing agent is the buyer. How much are they in love with your property?
Yeah.
I think that's going to really determine the mood and it's set for the rest of the transaction and make it also maybe a little bit easier to come into agreement on some of the terms that we may find to be an issue later down the road, as in an appraisal or inspection or some items that need to be repaired or replaced.
100%. To piggyback off a couple of things that you said, you could even take a higher escrow deposit to the next level and you could make all or a portion of it non-refundable, right? And a lot of people who will do this will make it non-refundable after the inspection period. So they're essentially saying, hey, either it's a cash deal or I know my funding is going to go through. I'm that confident, but I'm going to make $5, $10, $20, whatever it is, $1,000 non-refundable. I'm so confident it's going to close that I can do that, right? And if you've already got through the inspection, hey, you can feel a little bit more comfortable doing that. Also, you'd mentioned taking conventional over some of the government-backed loans. Cash is going to be better than any of it, right? Because now you don't have a lender involved, no underwriting involved. Doesn't matter if you lose your job. None of that is a factor anymore because you don't have funding involved. Lissette, what else you got?
And just putting all these offers out and taking a look at the big picture, it's tough sometimes. You're going to have so many offers that are just, they seem the same. There's not apple to oranges. They're all pretty much pretty close when it comes to numbers. That's when it comes really important to have communication with the buyer's agent. And for
Yes.
that buyer agent to reach out to the listing agent, communicate with them and see, hey, what is it maybe that we could do to make our offer stick out a little bit different? And that, what is your seller looking for too? Is there a closing date that they have in mind? Do they need post occupancy? Those can be really deciding factors. I know on one of my last transaction, post occupancy was a nice option to have. We don't know if we need it or not, but we know it's on the table and it's a tool that we may have to use.
I like that. And going back into the agent's so important. And I think a lot of sellers, you've heard me say this before, sellers will interview 3 agents before they pick one. Makes sense. But buyers don't. They go with their niece or they go with whoever picks up the phone first or whatever, But that person is presenting you to the seller. You want someone who's phenomenal, right? So can you build rapport with them? I think is a big deal. There are people you meet on day one, agents, and instantly you're butting heads with them, right? And it's like, man, I can't really spit a sentence out without this person trying to beat on me. Well, you can guess how challenging that's going to be throughout the entire transaction, right? Whereas if you've got somebody completely warm and helpful and just communicates wonderfully, that's going to be nice throughout the entire transaction. Also, what's their experience like? If you've got an experienced agent who's dealt with a lot of problems, when problems arise, A, it's not going to be as big of a deal. We've dealt with this before. We'll deal with it again. That's going to be the mentality. And B, they're going to have solutions to those problems, which is great. Offer mistakes. I can't tell you how many times I see offers come in and there's mistakes all throughout it, right? And the big one was that you'll probably nod your head in agreement with me is anytime we get somebody from down south, one of the newer agents from down south, there's a couple lines on there. I think it's 168 through 173 where you can choose, is the buyer paying title, is the seller paying title, or is it a Miami-Dade offer? Well, they get so used to Miami-Dade offers, they don't read it anymore, and they click Miami-Dade even though we're in Port St. Lucie, right? So if I see that, I think, what else are we going to have problems with, right? Because they're not paying attention to these little details. Are they bad with technology? That's something too. If you see that as a buyer, if your agent has to drive to your house because they can't figure out how to email it for signatures, what other issues are you going to have along the way that might be a problem? Are they slow to respond, which you mentioned? Are they cryptic? Sometimes I'm having a conversation with an agent and they'll be, now you do have to represent your clients and you've got to hold back information that could hurt them, but they'll be cryptic about everything. And it's like, holy smokes, it's going to be like pulling teeth. We're not going to get through this transaction with this person, right? And the last one with buyer's agents is their reputation. I can tell you right now, there are certain agents in this industry, Lissette, I would say you're one of them. If you hear their name pop up as a buyer's agent, you think, oh, this is going to be phenomenally easy because this person has a phenomenal reputation. And there are other people who have reputations for being incredibly challenging to work with. So the reputation of the agent you use is a big deal too. And as a listing agent, you want to know all of that about the buyer's agents before making a decision. Lissette, what else you got?
Now, just keep it in mind for the buyers out there, it's not always price, it's terms, it's conditions, contingencies that come along with the contract, the offer that you're presenting. So a lot of times when these sellers are sitting down looking at these offers, they're choosing an offer that may be strong in price, but could not always be the highest and best that's on the table. It's just they offer better contingencies, better terms, and maybe they have a better relationship between the buyer's agent and the listing agent, and also the buyer coming across as strong, motivated, in love with the property. We see a lot of times they're writing up letters showing their family and how happy they would be in this house. Sometimes that's a motivating factor for a seller.
Yep. Sellers, here's a couple last things to think about. Strength of financing, right? For me as a listing agent, I want to see a local lender. Again, with all those things we just talked about with a buyer's agent, I want to see it with that lender, right? I want to know them. I want to know if there's a problem. I can knock on their door and it's not Quicken, it's not Rocket Mortgage, it's not someone out of Kentucky. I can go find them. I also want to see in the pre-approval that they've looked at their credit, they've looked at their income, and they've looked at their job history. I have seen deals fall apart with newer agents where they don't have a lender who looks at their job history. They find out they're 1099 and my gosh, we got to have a W-2 employee for this loan program. Boom, we just lost the deal. Or, hey, we got to have 2 years and this person only has 9 months. Boom, we lost the deal. I want to see that this lender has looked at you with a fine-tooth comb and now we're comfortable moving forward, right? How much down are you putting? If you're going to put 20, 30, 40% down, it might be the same price offer as someone else's, but now I know you've got money as a buyer. So if we have a problem, whether it's an inspection problem, appraisal falls short, moving trucks need to be involved that maybe weren't involved, or extensions or whatever, people with money can solve problems. And if I'm looking at my seller telling them, hey, same offer, everything's the same, but this person's putting 5% down, this person's putting 50% down, even though at the end of the day, they're going to walk with the same amount of money from both offers, I know more problems can likely be solved with the person with money. Always? No, but usually, right? 2 last ones here. Proof of funds. Do you have the money and can you show it to me, right? I can't tell you how many times I'll say, hey, it sounds like we're going to take your deal. I'm really excited. Thank you, Lissette, for the offer. I just need to see proof of funds that they've got the 50% down, that they go, oh, well, it's actually coming from their Uncle Bob and they haven't given it to him yet. Oh, okay, well, have Uncle Bob give it to him. Have the lender say it's okay that Uncle Bob gave it to him, and then let's try this again, right? But you want to see they've got the money. If you see they've got the money, even if they're only putting this much down, if they've got a massive amount of money, now when the appraisal falls short, now when you have an issue with inspection, at least you know you've got someone who can move forward. Whether or not they will is a different question, but they have the ability to move forward. And then the last thing I'll throw out is personal property. Some of you guys are trying to get rid of stuff and people will take it. Man, that's a headache to get rid of. That's a great thing as a seller, right? Some of you guys do not want to get rid of anything and everybody wants it except that buyer. They're willing to give you all your personal property. Take it with, I don't want it. Great. That makes it beautiful, right? So personal property is going to play a big part in your desire to take a specific offer as well. Lissette, any last nuggets or recommendations for sellers here before we let you go?
Just piggybacking on that lender and using a local lender, every time I've had a lender that's involved in a transaction and they're in either the email chain from the very beginning, or they've actually picked up the phone and called the listing agent and spoken to them and let them know what a strong buyer we have on hand, that has made the world of a difference. We already know what's setting the tone for a transaction. We have the lender in communication and backing up the buyer, and that makes the seller so much more confident. So just trying to close it up here, multiple offers are still out there. And again, it doesn't always come down to price. It comes down to so many factors. Having that conversation with your buyer agent and understanding what's the most important factors that the seller's looking for and what you could probably provide for them could make the world of a difference.
Awesome. Well, Lissette, I appreciate you coming on. Everybody watching, thank you so much for joining us. If you ever have questions on any of this stuff, you can always reach out to either one of us, and we're more than happy to help you. Have a wonderful Monday.